Hello, grade sevens. I hope you are all well. You are staying home, you are staying safe, and you've been able to complete your schoolwork. This first natural sciences lesson is going to be a recap on the slides that you were given for your holiday work. The first topic we'll cover is diversity of plants and sexual reproduction of angiosperms. Okay, so the word diversity means differences. Scientists are able to classify land plants into 5 groups. The first 2 are the most important ones that we will be focusing on. The seed plants, those that can bear seeds to reproduce, and those that can reproduce through spores, like ferns. Right, if we look at seed-producing plants, we have 2 groups, angiosperms and gymnosperms. The angiosperms are also known as flowering plants because they produce flowers. The gymnosperms produce seeds that are enclosed in cones. Angiosperms are further divided into 2 groups, dicotyledons and monocotyledons. Now, the word di means 2 and the word mono means 1. So dicotyledonous plants have got 2 seed lobes, as you can see there. These seed lobes provide nourishment for the growing embryo or the baby plant, as we can call it, that is enclosed in the seed. The bean plants that we were growing at school for our practical are examples of dicotyledonous plants. Monocotyledonous plants, an example of those are maize seeds. It is very important to know the difference between monocotyledons and dicotyledons. So this picture shows you some differences. There are differences in the seeds, in the roots, the vascular bundles, which you don't need to worry about too much, the shape of the leaves, as well as the flowers, how many petals in each flower. Please make sure you have watched the video showing the differences between monocotyledons and dicotyledonous plants. If you've already watched it, you can make sure to watch it again. Right, our seed-bearing plants, gymnosperms and angiosperms, which we have mentioned. Then we also have plants that do not have seeds. Those reproduce through spores, like mosses and ferns. Okay, plants are very useful to people. So there's various ways in which we can use plants, food and beverages, for example, medicine, soaps and cosmetics, weaving and the making of baskets, as well as for decoration. Right, the next topic that we need to cover, sexual reproduction in angiosperms. Remember, this is all revision, so we did cover this work. So I hope you do remember all of this. Right, flowers produce seeds in order to reproduce. The purpose or function of a flower is to attract pollinators, birds and insects that will help to pollinate the plant, be a host for fertilization, host being the area where fertilization can happen, creation of fruit and production of seeds. The flower can be called the reproductive organ of the angiosperm because it is where reproduction happens. It contains male parts and female parts. If you look at this labeled diagram of a flower, the female part we call a carpel or a pistil. It is made up of a stigma, a style, an ovary, and an ovule. This diagram shows you the function of each of those different parts. Then we have the male part called the stamen that consists of an anther and a filament. So in this particular diagram, there are male and female parts in the same flower. So that we would call a bisexual flower. It does happen that you have flowers with only female parts and flowers with only male parts. Those we'd call unisex plants. Right, so pollination and fertilization, these are processes that are very important. They are involved in the reproduction of plants. So pollination, this is the process whereby pollen, which is the male sex cell, meets up with the female sex cell, which is the ova. Now, pollination can happen in 2 ways. In a plant that is bisexual, that has male and female parts in the same flower, the pollen will just stick onto the stigma and travel down the style and enter the ovary to meet up with the ovum. which is the eggs. If the flowers are unisex, so male parts only or female parts only, pollinators come into the picture. So the pollinators will come on a plant. They will be looking for either nectar or pollen in the flower. As they do this, the pollen will stick onto their bodies. When they travel to another flower, perhaps that flower is female, the pollen will then stick onto the stigma of the female, travel down the style, and meet up with the ovum inside the ovary. That we call cross-pollination. Right, pollination can also be carried out through wind and water, where the wind will just blow the pollen in the air and it will then land on the stigma of a female part. Water, same thing. The water will transport the pollen to a female part of a flower. So pollinators are extremely important. If there's no pollinators, there will be no pollination, therefore no fertilization, no seeds, no fruit, and no food for humans or animals. Please be sure to watch this video about the function of pollinators, what their job is and how they do it. Right, this next slide tells you about fertilization. Fertilization is the process where the pollen actually meets up with the ovule and they form an embryo. The embryo is the baby plant. These two videos show you in great detail how fertilization happens. Please be sure to watch them. If you've watched them already, be sure to watch them again. Right, once fertilization has occurred and we have a seed forming, okay, that is where the male and the female part have fused together. We have a growing seed. Now, the seed needs to germinate. It needs to land on the ground so that the new plant inside can start to grow. This picture here shows you that process. So the root will always be the part that will grow out of the seed first, followed by the stem, and eventually the leaves. Right, this slide shows you the life cycle of a plant. So the first part would be germination in this case. The seeds are scattered and they are ready to grow. The seed will absorb water, which will allow the root to start growing. The root will anchor the plant in the ground. The seed starts growing. The next phase, you have small leaves growing. If the plant then gets enough sunlight, water, and carbon dioxide, it will grow into a mature or adult plant. The mature adult plant then has male and female parts in it, which will allow it to reproduce, make seeds, and the process will happen once more. Now, that is a brief overview of sexual reproduction in angiosperms. Please be sure to prepare for our next lesson, the worksheets that you were given, worksheet 1 all the way up to worksheet 6. Then I will also cover your sexual reproduction in humans as well as variation. So until I speak to you again, keep safe, stay at home, and be sure to do your work, please. I will upload the corrections for the exercises related to this work that we did already onto our Google Classroom page. Right, see you again soon.